The moment Malcolm Voss decided my career would end over his son's birthday cake. He did not bother lowering his voice. At this company, I'm number one, and so is my family. The words landed heavy and final, followed by the soft scrape of paper sliding across the table. I did not look down. I looked at him. 15 years of building systems that never failed. Reduced to a sentence rehearsed long before I walked into that room. Someone shifted in their chair. Someone else stared at their hands. You didn't show up, Malcolm continued, leaning back as if the verdict were already filed. That tells me everything, everything. Not the nights I slept on office couches. Not the global security framework that still ran because I designed it to survive bad leadership. Just a missed party. My system deployment was scheduled, I replied, keeping my voice level. Delaying it would have he cut the air with a raised hand. My son turned 12 once. You made a choice. The folder waited, angled toward me. Signature tabs already flagged. Termination, immediate, clean, efficient. I noticed how neatly everything had been prepared. How the legal language left no room for conversation. This was not a reaction. It was a plan. I'm Rowan Halevy, I said, not to remind him who I was, but to remind myself. Principal systems architect. I built the backbone you're still using. Malcolm's mouth curved, not quite a smile. Security can be rebuilt. Loyalty can't. Across the table, Ethan Voss avoided my eyes. His silence carried more weight than his father's voice. The room had already chosen its side. I pushed the folder back without touching the pen. I won't be signing this today. Malcolm's expression tightened, just for a second. Enough for me to see it. As I stood, the general counsel murmured something under her breath. Not advice, a warning. I walked out with nothing in my hands and the certainty that this ending had been arranged long before I missed that invitation. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Her Fear. It explores power, silence, and the unseen cost of being underestimated. While the events are imagined, the emotions are drawn from real experiences faced by women whose value was questioned at the moment it mattered most. I reached the hallway before my access badge went cold. Since when did a birthday party decide your career? The email arrived just after lunch. Flagged urgent, subject line stamped in bold mandatory attendance. Beneath it, a single sentence stood out, polished and smug. Ethan Voss's birthday celebration, presents expected. Lena from compliance leaned over the divider before I could close the message. You're going, right? Her voice dropped. People notice who shows. I'll be here, I answered. Eyes still on the screen. Deployment window closes tonight. She winced, like I'd admitted something dangerous. It's not about cake. It's a loyalty test. Another chair rolled back. Marcus from infrastructure didn't look up from his phone. Miss it. And you're making a statement. I said, that work comes first. Marcus exhaled through his teeth. That's not the statement they're listening for. The system dashboard pulsed red in the corner of my monitor, an edge case in the authentication layer that could cascade if left untouched. I pulled the branch, ran the simulation again, watched the error replicate exactly as feared. Lena hovered. Ethan asked about you this morning. What did you tell him that you were buried? She paused. He laughed. I didn't respond. I rewrote the validation logic, reran the test, and waited for the green check to appear. It didn't. Not yet. A message popped up from Marcus. They rented the ballroom. His father's making a speech. Good for them, I murmured, fingers moving. This patch keeps us from locking out half our enterprise clients. You could stop by. Lena tried again. Show your face. I shook my head. Faces don't fix outages. Hours passed. The office thinned. The red finally turned amber, then green. I pushed the update and documented every change. Clean, stable, ready. My phone buzzed once more, another reminder. This one, Kurt. I left it unread. When I shut down my workstation, the timestamp confirmed what mattered. The system would hold. The celebration would pass. I gathered my bag and sent the final report, trusting the work to speak the language I believed in. How fast can 15 years disappear? My badge failed on the first scan. I tried again, slower, as if patience might change the outcome. The reader flashed red and went still. A security guard glanced over, then looked away, already briefed. Behind me, a familiar voice whispered my name. Rowan. It was Lena. her tone caught between sympathy and fear. Your account just dropped from the system. I pulled my laptop from my bag. The screen flickered, then went blank. A login prompt appeared and vanished before I could touch the keyboard. The machine shut itself down like it had decided I no longer existed. Remote logout. Marcus muttered from 2 desks away. That's fast. It's intentional, I said. My voice sounded steady. Even to me, human resources waited near the conference rooms. A man I barely recognized extended a folder with both hands. Careful not to brush my fingers. This is standard procedure, standard for what I asked. Opening it just enough to see the heading, immediate termination. He replied. Eyes fixed on the carpet, effective today. I turned the page. Language polished to erase a decade and a half. No acknowledgement of projects delivered. No mention of systems still running because of decisions I made years ago. A chair shifted behind me. The general counsel stood there, arms crossed, gaze angled toward the window instead of my face. When she spoke, it was barely louder than breath. Don't sign anything today. The HR representative stiffened. Elaine. She cut him off with a look. She's within her rights. I met Elaine's eyes then. She held them for half a second before looking away again. That was all the confirmation I needed. This was ready, I said, tapping the folder. Before this morning, no one argued. Marcus swallowed. They already reassigned your repositories. Of course they did. I closed the folder and handed it back. I'll take copies. HR hesitated, then nodded. As I stepped away, my phone vibrated. Email notifications stacked up. Access alerts rolling in like a quiet flood. They were thorough, almost nervous. Whatever they expected me to surrender with my signature. It was worth more to them than courtesy. What if leaving didn't mean losing everything? I spread the contracts across the table, the way I used to spread system diagrams, methodical, precise, unwilling to assume anything. 15 years of revisions, addenda, quiet negotiations no one ever paid attention to, because they trusted me to handle the unglamorous parts. The phone buzzed. Jonah Trent's name lit the screen. He had been gone from the company for years, but his voice still carried the weight of decisions made carefully. They moved fast, he said without greeting. Too fast for someone who thinks they're clean. They were prepared, I replied. That usually means fear. A pause. Then read the 3rd addendum from year 9. The one Malcolm didn't attend. I flipped to it. My breath slowed as the language sharpened into focus. Intellectual property carve-out. Triggered by termination without professional cause. Ownership reverting not to me personally, but to a separate entity. Halavi Systems Holdings, Jonah said when I didn't speak. You insisted on it. I insisted because he wanted loyalty clauses, I said. And loyalty doesn't protect work. Silence stretched on the line. Heavy with memory. The LLC is intact. Clean. Filed correctly. No gaps. I traced the paragraph again. Every word exact. Unambiguous. They hadn't forgotten this clause. They'd ignored it. Big difference. Another vibration cut in. Softer this time. An automated email. Subject line neutral. Tone clinical. License status update. Primary contact Halavi Systems Holdings LLC. I stared at the screen. Jonah exhaled slowly. That means the system checked its authority chain. They locked me out, I said. But the architecture still knows who owns it. That architecture was yours, he replied. You built it to recognize reality, not titles. I closed the document and stacked the pages neatly. The panic from earlier didn't return. Something else took its place, clarity. Sharp and contained. They think this is about a party, I said. They always do, Jonah answered, until the system stops listening to them. I ended the call and forwarded the email to a private folder I hadn't opened in years. The one labeled contingencies. Whatever they believed they had taken from me that morning, it wasn't the foundation. Why would the same people who erased me need me so urgently? My phone vibrated itself awake before I did. When I reached for it, the screen was already lit, the number sitting there like an accusation, 131 missed calls. The timestamps clustered through the night and into the early morning. Overlapping, frantic. Emails stacked beneath them. Urgent, critical, board escalation. The subject lines dropped all pretense of courtesy. No greetings, no signatures, just pressure. A new message slid in from Ethan Voss. It appeared, vanished, then appeared again as a missed call. The next one rang twice before stopping. Another followed immediately, longer this time, as if persistence might rewrite yesterday. I set the phone face down and poured coffee. It buzzed again. I let it. The silence on my end felt heavier than any response I could have sent. A voicemail transcript loaded on its own. Malcolm's voice, clipped and controlled, the way it sounded when he believed authority alone could solve a problem. He didn't mention the termination. He didn't mention the party. He said my name once, then corrected himself and asked for a technical clarification. That told me enough. I opened my laptop and logged into a private dashboard I hadn't touched in years. The global status map blinked amber across 3 continents. Authentication delays, license verification loops, nothing catastrophic yet. Nothing visible to customers, but close. A secure message popped up from Marcus. The punctuation gone from his sentences. Systems are holding, but updates are frozen. We can't push anything. Legal wants to know who owns the keys. I typed back a single line. They already know. Another call came through, this one from an unknown number. I watched it ring until it stopped. The quiet afterward felt deliberate, earned. The system hadn't failed. It had done exactly what it was designed to do when authority broke alignment with ownership. It paused. It waited. My phone finally went still, not because they were calm, but because they were regrouping. I closed the laptop and finished my coffee, letting the tension settle into something steady and manageable. The world they controlled yesterday had started asking for permission. What happens when authority meets a contract it can't control? I wasn't in the room, but I didn't need to be. The call reached me anyway. Elaine Park's voice, clipped, professional, stripped of pleasantries. They convened the board at 6. She said, "Emergency session." I listened. She filled the silence with what mattered. Malcolm opened by blaming infrastructure, then security, then legal. A brief pause. He didn't mention your name until someone else did. I pictured it without effort. Malcolm pacing, hands on the table. That tone he used when he believed volume equaled control. Elaine continued. When the map went amber, he demanded timelines. When the updates froze, he demanded heads. And when someone asked who owned the keys, I asked. Another pause, longer this time. That's when the room shifted. I heard paper move on her end. The sound of documents being placed where they couldn't be ignored. I stated the facts. She said, "The carve-out clause is valid. The termination did not cite professional cause. Ownership reverted through Halavi Systems Holdings. Enforceable. Clean." A breath. Someone else must have spoken, because her voice hardened. "Yes." Malcolm raised his voice. "Yes." He insisted salary implied ownership. She stopped again. I corrected him. I imagined the look on his face then, the one he wore when reality refused to bend. He asked if we could force compliance. Elaine went on. I said no. He asked if we could threaten you. I said that would worsen exposure. And then he ordered an emergency patent filing. The words came out flat. Today. As if speed could replace priority. I smiled without warmth. "It won't." I told him that, she said. In those words, silence settled between us, heavy with consequence. "They're counting on paperwork," I said. "Paper doesn't outrank architecture." "No," Elaine replied. "And the board knows it." The call ended, not with reassurance, not with apologies, just acknowledgement. They had reached the part of the process where noise stopped working. What came next would be measured, recorded, and impossible to shout down. What do you do when every legal exit is already sealed? The notification arrived first, forwarded from Elaine with no commentary attached, just the header, the reference number, and one sentence highlighted in gray. Application denied due to existing priority registrations. My phone rang seconds later. They tried to file under urgency. Elaine's voice carried a thin edge now. Expedited review, executive pressure, none of it mattered. "So it's on record," I replied. "It's been on record," she corrected, long before yesterday. I could hear other voices behind her, muted but tense. Chairs shifting, papers moving farther apart. As if proximity alone carried risk. One board member asked whether the filing could be appealed. She continued. Another asked who approved the termination language. A pause. Those were not friendly questions. Did Malcolm answer? He tried. The pause returned, heavier. Then he stopped talking. The next call came from Jonah. He didn't bother easing into it. "They're circling," he said. "Once legal options close, people start protecting themselves. Meaning no one wants their name on his decision anymore." I pictured the boardroom without needing details. Familiar allies turning into careful strangers. Support recalculated in real time. Elaine came back on the line. "I've been instructed to document everything from this point forward. That's new. It's overdue." Her breath caught briefly before steadying. "They asked if there was any scenario where you could be compelled to comply. And you told them." "I told them the truth," she said. "There is no leverage. None." The word settled cleanly. I closed my laptop and silenced the phone, not because there was nothing left to hear, but because nothing required my input. The process had moved past persuasion. Messages continued to arrive, shorter now, stripped of confidence. Requests replaced demands. Timing replaced authority. I let them stack unanswered. From the outside, it probably looked like restraint. Inside, it felt like inevitability, the kind that arrives only after every shortcut has been tried and rejected. They had reached the point where action was no longer theirs to choose. What does power look like when you no longer need permission? The meeting invite came without preamble. No agenda, no pleasantries, just a time and a room. When I arrived, Malcolm was already seated, shoulders squared, jaw set. Board members filled the rest of the table, careful not to meet my eyes all at once. I didn't wait for introductions. "I'm not here to discuss reinstatement," I began, placing a single document at the center. "That option expired yesterday." Malcolm leaned forward. "We can make this right." The general counsel shifted, clearing space in front of her. She knew what the paper was before she read the header. "This is a licensing proposal," I continued. "Non-exclusive, time-limited, enforcement automatic." Someone down the table scanned the first page. 48 hours, he murmured. I nodded. "After that, renewal terms change, permanently." Malcolm's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. "You're asking us to pay for what we already built." I let the silence do the work. Then, evenly, "You paid salaries. You didn't own authorship. You terminated the person who did." A breath moved through the room. The kind that comes when a door closes. "We can negotiate." Malcolm tried. "Adjust the numbers." "The numbers aren't the leverage," I said. "Continuity is." Elaine lifted her eyes from the document. "The terms are standard," she said, "given the circumstances." Malcolm turned to her, incredulous. She didn't look away. "This keeps your system stable," I added. "It gives your clients time. It gives the board cover." "And you?" Malcolm asked. "I move on." The words landed heavier than anything I'd said so far. He stared at the paper as if it might change. It didn't. The clock had already started. 48 hours was not a threat. It was a boundary. I stood, collecting my folder. "You'll receive a confirmation email when the window closes." No one stopped me. No one followed. Behind me, chairs shifted, voices dropped, and the future recalculated itself without my involvement. Who pays when leadership mistakes loyalty for competence? The decision didn't come with a press conference. It came with a calendar invite and a locked door. Elaine called me afterward, her voice stripped of formality. "They voted," she said. "Unanimous." I didn't ask for clarification. "Malcolm is out," she continued. "Removed for gross mismanagement, effective immediately." I closed my eyes, not in relief, but in recognition. This was always the direction the math pointed to. "And Ethan?" I asked. A pause. Measured. All internal authority revoked. His role dissolved. No transition period. The words carried weight because they were procedural, not emotional. Boards don't punish feelings. They correct risk. Elaine kept going. Downtime penalties alone are approaching 9 figures. Client concessions, delayed renewals, remediation costs. The damage report is extensive. Any public statement? I asked. No. A quiet inhale. They've chosen silence. Silence was familiar. It was the same language used when I was escorted out with a folder and a revoked badge. The same restraint that pretended nothing had happened while everything changed. "They asked if you would reconsider," Elaine added, carefully, not officially, just interest. "I won't be returning," I told them that. Her voice softened. "Just a fraction." I also told them why. I imagined the boardroom then, chairs filled with people recalculating their past decisions, their future exposure. The absence of Malcolm's voice, the absence of confidence. Another call came in, this one from Jonah. They're rewriting history, he said, trying to make this look inevitable. It is inevitable, I replied, just not in the way they hoped. Outside the process, I felt oddly untouched by it. No urge to explain, no need to be vindicated out loud. Consequence had taken over where argument failed. The company I once held together was learning how expensive that labor had been, and for the first time, they were paying for it without me. What do you gain when you choose not to go back? The agreement was shorter than I expected. Clean language, fewer promises. The kind of document written by people who had learned what certainty costs. The other firm's counsel slid it across without ceremony, already knowing I would read every line. Ownership transfers on execution, she said, tapping the clause with her pen. Long-term license, irrevocable. I signed where the tab waited. No flourish, no hesitation. Her pen followed. We'll wire the first tranche within 48 hours. I nodded once. Compliance notices go out today. They already have drafts prepared. Good. I stood, closed the folder, and left the room without shaking hands. The deal didn't require theater. My phone buzzed as I reached the elevator. Elaine's name appeared, then Jonah's. I let both go to voicemail. I already knew what they would say. The collapse was underway. The system would remain stable, but the company would not. Not without the one person who had been quietly aligning its pieces for years. I didn't attend the final meeting. I didn't watch the stock chatter or the internal memos rewriting cause and effect. I chose distance. Distance made the decision permanent. Later that evening, a message came through from an unknown number. One sentence, no greeting. We never thought you'd actually leave. I typed a reply and erased it. Then I put the phone down and didn't pick it up again. I didn't destroy their company. I simply stopped being the one holding it together. The life lesson came quietly. Without applause or regret, loyalty that demands your silence is not loyalty at all. Protect your work, protect your name, and know the moment when staying costs more than walking away. That choice changes everything, and once made, it cannot be undone.